Dude, I've played video games all my life. There wasn't a single point in my life where I wasn't addicted to some sort of game that I was playing. Whether it be something like small and simple, like The Sims 2, or something crazy and out there and needed a lot of skill, like Super Street Fighter 4. That shit was crazy, right? So right now, I'm going to talk to you guys, and I'm going to give you my top 5 favorite video games from my childhood, right? Let's start off. Number 1, Ratchet & Clank Up Your Arsenal. That is the third Ratchet & Clank game from the PlayStation 2 era of Ratchet & Clank games. Ratchet & Clank Up Your Arsenal. Dude, this game was fun. Like, I know I say that about every game that I talk about and all that, but like, this game was really freaking fun. I've played that like at least like 100 times, and I can still go back and play it and enjoy that game like crazy, right? The level design was really fun. There's like a whole mess of planets that you go to and stuff like that, revisiting the galaxy from Ratchet & Clank 1. I believe that is the Solana galaxy, and you revisit old planets and stuff like that, and you come back and you see new ones and have brand new enemies and stuff that you gotta fight. It's crazy, right? What's also crazy is the creative weapon design. Dude, the weapons are freaking nuts, man. There's a weapon that you shoot a black hole, and then other black holes come out, and it'll freaking merge together to like just keep building a giant freaking black hole. You got simple stuff as well, like the Glove of Doom, where you'll throw a orb on the ground, little robots will spawn out and just attack nearby enemies. Simple stuff like, I forgot the name of it, but there's a gun that shoots electricity that chains to other enemies and stuff like that. And then like, weapons really can get out there in Ratchet & Clank. That's always been the thing for that game, right? Now, this game has always had some really hilarious, funny characters too. I love a game that shows a lot of emphasis on Captain Quark. Captain Quark is by far one of my most favorite characters in Ratchet & Clank. This dude is so dumb, it's fun. Like, it's really fun. I just love seeing him on screen doing dumb shit and all that, you know? The story is fantastic. It's pretty much freaking Dr. Nefarious, the main bad guy of the game, wants to completely take over the galaxy, turn everyone in the galaxy into robots because he hates organic life forms, right? He hates people who are like actually alive. And the crazy thing is, when you get to a certain part in the game, he actually like fucks around and does it. So as you're going through backtracking through old planets, the enemies that you saw that were just normal bad guys before are now freaking robots and shit like that. And that attention to detail is pretty freaking cool, you know? Now, with all the crazy wicked weapons that I just mentioned that are out there and all that, keep in mind you can also upgrade them as well. As you use them, they progress, and they, like, for example, there's a plasma whip, right? Pretty simple weapon. As you use that weapon and stuff like that, it'll level up to plasma whip level 2, level 3, level 4. Then I believe they go up to level 5, and then it'll like evolve into like a brand new weapon. And then after you beat the game, I believe you're also able to level it up to like level 100. So it's just, you can just keep going. Like, dude, it's nuts. And same thing with the armor that you're currently wearing. The armor in Ratchet & Clank Up Your Arsenal, you can just freaking upgrade it. There's upgrade stations at the Phoenix, at the Starship Phoenix. When you go inside of there, there's a vendor there. Obviously, it's pretty simple. Pay money, you get an armor upgrade. Great. Obviously increases your defense, but the armor starts to progressively look more and more dripped out. So it's like, oh shit, this looks freaking awesome. You know, like this game is awesome, especially for a PlayStation 2 game. I used to freaking love this game so much when I was a kid. I still do. Ratchet & Clank Up Your Arsenal is by far the best one of the PlayStation 2 era of old Ratchet & Clank games, dude. I love that game so much. Number 2, Mario Party 7. Dude, Mario Party 7. I don't care what anyone says. Argue with your mama. You can freaking fight me about this. I don't care. Throw the gloves up. Mario Party 7 is the best Mario Party game to ever come out. Ever. Mario Party 7 is number 1. None of the other ones are even touching that game. Dude, this game is fantastic. Dude, the mini games are freaking memorable. This mini games, these, oh my god, this game with all the mini games that this game has, all of them completely scream Mario. Like, you know how the new Mario Party games, they're too, I guess you could say, realistic. Not realistic per se, but like too modern day Nintendo-y. Mario Party 7, that game came out back when Mario games were still just goofy enough to be like kids games and all that, but like completely be, I guess you could say, appealing to some sort of like an older demographic, because that I still have my GameCube with Mario Party 7. Dude, I can just pop that thing in and just play. Let me tell you something.
Let me tell you something.
If you were to freaking play Mario Party with me, or even Mario Party Superstars, because they added this minigame, if you were to play Mario Party 7 or Superstars, and the minigame that gets selected for the round is Pokey Pummel, put the controller down, because you are not beating me, dude. Button mashing minigames like Pokey Pummel, you cannot beat me in. I swear to God, when I was a kid, my high score in Pokey Pummel was, I shit you not, like 2 seconds. Like 2 freaking seconds. I wish I can go back to being that skilled at it. That's freaking nuts. Now, the stages in Mario Party 7 are completely fantastic. I love this, right? Now, what normal Mario Party games from nowadays have, what a problem is that it's pretty much, oh, here's an old stage. All right, cool, great, it looks nice. But the premise is always the same. Get 20 coins, go to a star, buy it. That's it. It's always the same, right? In Mario Party 7, they have a space stage that's littered with hidden chests all over the place. Running around the stage, you don't know what's in any of these chests. Bust them open, this could be a star, it could be coins, it could be an item. Some spaces have hidden chests as you go out through them. And but they're invisible. So when you go through and you're like, oh, I landed on a blue space, and then suddenly the camera pans in on you, boom, hidden chest, now see what you got. Like this, dude. Stuff like that. There was another stage, I believe it looks like a giant farm kind of thing, where you collect windmills, and windmills represent each star that you have, right? As you put in money towards them, almost like a bank kind of thing. So if I walk up to this windmill, I put 5 coins in it, but the windmill rewards me with 2 stars. Cool, great. But you can run up to that windmill as well and be like, oh, he put 5 stars? Fuck him, I'll put 10. You put 10 coins, bam, you took those coins from me, you took control of that windmill. I mean, you took those stars from me. There, I see how much I love this game. You took those stars from me, you took over the windmill, and now those stars belong to you. See, stuff like that. Modern day Mario Party games need to implement some sort of stuff like that, because now all they ever do is just freaking take over, go buy a star. That's it, bye. Now, the roster of characters in Mario Party 7 is really nothing to write home about. It's pretty much the generic Mario characters you would expect from, back then in the early 2000s. Mario, Luigi, Peach, Daisy, Waluigi, Wario. I think the only 2 weird characters, which back then, but like is normal now, that they added was Dry Bones and Birdo. So, the characters are nothing, too wicked, Now, crazy thing is, this game came out on the GameCube, but they experimented with an 8-player mode. See, now in Mario Party 7, they had an 8-player mode where pretty much it confused me as a kid because I thought there's only 4 slots. 2 people take control over 1 controller. I would control one half of the other controller, and player 2 will control the other half of my controller, and pretty much essentially 2 people per controller, adding up to 8 people by the time you get to the 4th controller. That's pretty interesting, and I like that they experimented with 8 people like that on the GameCube for Mario Party 7. Lastly, the whole item system that works with Mario Party 7 is pretty much, they call it the orb. It's like orbs system, it's pretty much your item is in a Pokeball, throw it around the stage, and that's it, really. But like, it's such a simple system that I feel like that should have been the ongoing system for Mario Party 7, or really for Mario Party games going forward. That whole orb system, it was really good, simple, easy to understand. It matched with the theme of the game and stuff like that. It worked. It just worked, and really, I feel like they should have kept it like that, especially with Mario Party games going forward. Number 3, Spider-Man 2. Now, no, I'm not talking about the Insomniac Spider-Man 2, although I do completely love that game as well. But nope, that's not the Spider-Man 2 we're talking about here. We're talking about the movie tie-in Tobey Maguire Spider-Man 2 that came out for the PlayStation 2, the PSP, for the GameCube, all those systems. But primarily, I'm talking about the GameCube version, because that's the one I had when I was a kid, right? This is one of the greatest Spider-Man games ever. You don't need me to tell you that. The internet all agrees with it. Spider-Man 2, the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man 2 is one of the greatest Spider-Man games of all time. It's freaking fantastic.
Say that again?
This game walked so Insomniac Spider-Man could run. Now, of course, as soon as you boot this game up, the first thing that you get, which is like a warm welcome, especially if you played the first Tobey Maguire Spider-Man game, Bruce Campbell, baby. You got Bruce Campbell back narrating the game, and love it. I completely welcome, and really, I welcome any game with Bruce Campbell's narration like that. We need to make that a thing going forward. I want to play Helldivers with Bruce Campbell narrating that. I would love that. Story mode. Now, if you've seen the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man 2 movie, you know 90% of what's going to happen in this game. However, they've thrown in some stuff that was not in the movie. Characters like the Rhino, Mysterio, Black Cat, the Shocker, stuff like that, and they implemented them pretty good, honestly. It doesn't feel like they just shoehorn them in out of nowhere. Now this game's littered with enemies, like how the Spider-Man 3 movie problem has, where it has too many enemies. This game, they molded it pretty good, and in all honesty, my favorite enemy that's in this game is Mysterio. I actually love the Sam Raimi version of Mysterio in this game. The whole I'm an alien, I'm from a different planet, blah 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 blah. That was cool. I like that. I don't think I've ever seen any Mysterio ever do something like that. So that was new, that was cool, and I like alien stuff, so yeah. Now the best level in Spider-Man 2 is by far the Mysterio level, where he takes you into like this weird crazy funhouse. Now it kind of reminds me of a lesser known Spider-Man villain, not really Spider-Man but Marvel villain, Arcade, with that whole thing. I don't know, just the aesthetic of it just kind of reminds me of him. Now of course you cannot mention this game without mentioning the web swinging mechanics. The web swinging mechanics is what started the whole Spider-Man having to be a little bit realistic with his web swinging, because if you ever played the Neversoft Spider-Man game, he's just web swinging into the air mindlessly, and he's just going forward, so it's like, alright, yeah, Now the biggest thing that drove me to this game when I was a kid, because keep in mind I played this game when I was like 6 or 7, dude, the free roam. I believe this was the first Spider-Man game to give you complete free roam. Now that blew my mind. The fact that your Spider-Man can just swing throughout the city as much as you want, all that. You can even go to the Statue of Liberty. All that stuff, dude. The free roam in this game was great, and it set a standard that I was very, very thankful for, because now we have masterful Spider-Man games like the Insomniac Spider-Man games, and that shit was really freaking great. I love this game, and I'm so thankful that it ever even existed. Number 4. Now, anyone who knows me is not going to be surprised by this entry, because listen, Dragon Ball Z Budokai Tenkaichi 3. Now, I need you guys to understand here. This is one of the greatest games of all time. I don't care what anyone says. The expansive roster in this game is freaking insane. Now, as of current status, I know we're all sitting here and we're all pretty spoiled about Dragon Ball Sparking Zero, but I need you to understand. Put this into your head, right? Tenkaichi 3 came out in 2007 for the PlayStation 2. Now, I need you to understand, for PlayStation 2 is not the most powerful hardware out there. This game had 162 playable characters. That is freaking insane, especially for a Dragon Ball game that's freaking on the PlayStation like that. Each of these characters fought their own specific way, had unique moves, had unique the support moves and shit like that, ultimate attacks. There was a whole freaking expansive freaking list of stages with variations. Some stages were at nighttime, and which mattered because with characters like Bardock, who can turn into a great ape, you need the moon. You need the moon on the stage. So, let me tell you something.
Let me tell you something!
If you were playing against me as a kid, and you picked Bardock, and you picked the night stage, I already knew what you were planning. I was going to try hard. I'm going to take out your Bardock. You're not turning into a damn great ape against me. That freaking game was incredible. That roster was nuts. The single player modes, there were hella single player modes, dude. There was the tournament mode, which is pretty self-explanatory. You know, you're gonna do a tournament, you're gonna do a tournament. Obviously, you don't need me to tell you there was a story mode in this game. Almost every Dragon Ball game nowadays has a story mode, and that was before the whole Xenoverse thing or anything like that. So it just told you the story of Dragon Ball for like the 100th time. So really, I don't need to go over that much. It's the story of Dragon Ball all the way to GT. You get it. See, now I had the PlayStation 2 version of this game. Here's the crazy part that I didn't even know when I was growing up, or else I would have asked for it. The Wii version of this game had online multiplayer. You could go online and fight people online. See, you know, I'm gonna feel old here, but you know, back in my day, if you wanted to fight in Tenkaichi 3, you ask your parents if you can come over first. You grab your book bag and shit, because it was most likely after school and shit. Come over to my house, dust off that second controller, and I'll beat your ass. That's how we used to play multiplayer back then, back in my day at least. But the whole freaking online multiplayer shit for Tenkaichi 3, I had no freaking clue about that, dude. That was freaking nuts. And I would have loved to have had it for the Wii if I knew that it had that. Like, I freaking wish that man. Now here we are, number 1. Now, this is gonna sound crazy. Before I even name off the game, I am not exaggerating. And you guys know me, I exaggerate just for the sake of exaggerating. I am very extra, but I am being completely honest here with you guys. I had to have had put at least 3,000 hours into this game. I am not lying. This number 1 spot that I had to have had these thousands of hours into, Super Smash Brothers Brawl. Now, I need you to understand completely. The Nintendo Wii came out in 2006. Now, anyone from that age, or for who's a thing, I guess, because everybody's freaking super young now, everyone remembers how hard it was to get their hands on a Nintendo Wii back in 2006. It was almost freaking impossible. Now, it was a little easier because when Brawl came out in 2008. I was an absolute huge fan of Smash Bros. Melee, and I loved that freaking game. Loved it. Now, when my uncle had told me, hey, they're making a new Smash Brothers game, and he showed me the trailers for Smash Bros. Brawl, I was freaking out because I was like, dude, this is freaking nuts. Like, I can't wait for this game. When Smash Bros. Brawl came out, see, okay, so a little bit of backstory. I grew up relatively poor, right? So the fact that I even had a Wii was a miracle. So Smash Bros. Brawl was one of the only games that I had for a very long time, which explains all the constant hours I put into that game. Dude, there has to be very little things that I have not discovered about that game, right? For example, that character roster, I've obviously unlocked everyone. That character roster at that time was freaking massive. My main, of course, being Ike. That was my main. That was my guy. If I chose Ike, your ass was freaking dust. Now, what I loved about that game was the whole snapshots thing that you can do, right? I don't believe Smash Melee had that, to where you're in the middle of a fight, there's some stuff going on. Oh, that looked cool. You took a picture and just took a picture and like, oh, sweet. And then you could save it to the hard drive to Nintendo Wii and stuff like that, right? That was pretty cool. Now, what's one of the most underrated awesome things, and Smash Bros. Games don't even have this anymore, are the masterpieces, right? I need you guys to remember, the masterpieces was, I guess you can call it a mode. Scroll over to the menu on your menu in Smash Brawl. You go to masterpieces and there's demos of some of the most popular games that Nintendo had to offer at that point in time. But they were, I guess they were really technically trials because they were on a time limit that you could play them. For Christ's sake, they had 5 minutes of Ocarina of Time that you could play on there. That was my first time even looking at or playing Ocarina of Time, was through the freaking masterpieces on Smash Brawl. That was pretty nuts. Like a normal Smash Bros. Game, that game had hella challenges for you to do. I swear to God, it felt like those challenges were limitless. I've never completed all of them because after a certain point, they get harder and harder and harder, and you're like, dude, what the hell? Like, it was freaking nuts. After a certain point, it was like almost impossible to do. I did not do all the challenges growing up, despite all the hours I put into the game. I did not. Now, what I miss from Smash Bros. Games that Smash Ultimate doesn't even have anymore are the trophies. I miss trophies being a thing in Smash Bros. Alright, I don't like spirits in the Smash Ultimate. I don't like it. They should have kept trophies, because I like looking at the 3D character model, it having a little bit of a bio, and then telling you what games they were in and stuff like that. You pretty much just learn, you know. I like that a lot, and Smash Ultimate took that out, and I really wish they didn't, because the trophies in Brawl, I think I actually had almost all of them. Smash Bros. Brawl had weird little mini games built into it to also keep you busy. I swear to God, this game was made for a kid with ADHD like me. This shit had a coin shooter. Now, you're probably like, what the hell is a coin shooter? You would pretty much grab coins throughout the story mode of Smash Brawl, and with those coins, you can stick them into this little shooter thing, and then the freaking trophies will come down in like a line along with these circle enemies type thing, and just shoot the trophies, and as soon as you're done, oh, you got the trophy, and just rinse and repeat. That's pretty much it. I swear to God, a kid with ADHD like me, I was going nuts over that. I was there for at least 45 minutes almost every time I launched that game up, just shooting shit, you know. It's kind of weird, you know. Now, as you just heard me mention, story mode. This Smash Bros. Had a freaking story mode called the Subspace Emissary. First of all, awesome name, you know? Crazy thing is, the story for Subspace Emissary was written by the guy who freaking wrote several installments of Square Enix's Final Fantasy franchise, namely 7 and its freaking spin-off Advent Children and shit like that. I think he also did he did 7, 8, and I believe also 10. This Smash Bros. Game for the story had a writer from Final Fantasy in it. It's freaking nuts. Now, I will say, the story mode was pretty good, but it did kind of get on my nerves. And I'm looking at you, the Great Maze. Fuck the Great Maze. I hated that stage. Hated it. Now, Smash Brawl had built such a cult following, and I love this. They had built such a cult following that there was a group of modders that created a huge mod of Smash Bros. Brawl, and it was called Super Smash Brothers Project M. I love it. Anyone who's in the Smash Bros. Community, who's decently into the rabbit hole, knows about Project M. Now, here's the thing, right? You can sit there and get the actual ISO hack and just play it on an emulator and stuff like that. I freaking downloaded the mod onto an SD card and put it on my Wii, so I was playing it on my actual hardware on my Wii and stuff like that. Freaking awesome. And I believe I had a bit of an extra modded version of Project M, and I don't remember the name of it, and it sucks. My Project M had character models completely swapped out. I kid you not, before Smash Ultimate, I had Cloud fighting Sephiroth. I had weird stuff like Mr. Krabs fighting Eric Cartman and shit like that. At that point in time, it was the end of the Wii's lifespan, so I was just going nuts and having fun with that game. It's just huge what if, what the fuck battles and shit like that, you know? Now, I feel like I missed out on a lot of really cool video games growing up when I was a kid, since I didn't really have access to a massive amount of them because my family wasn't really growing up with a lot of money and stuff like that, right? So whenever I'd see other kids playing games, they would play very different games, which always made me curious, right? As to, what's this guy's favorite list of games? What's that guy's list of favorite games and stuff like that? I've always been curious about what games other people love to play. So I decided to ask the 90s router what 5 games he played growing up as a kid to get an idea of what other types of video games other people would play. So I'll let him take it away right here.
Thank you, Konosuke7, for clarifying that this list is a top 5 games from your childhood with a max rating of M for mature, because otherwise this would have been a way different video. Alright, so I can't really rank these from worst to best, so we're just going to go in order from what I played first and so on. So number 5 is going to be Fable, and one of the first, if not the first game that offered a character creation that was more than just a set of sliders to make my character look comically fucking stupid. No, in fact, it didn't have that at all. More like a character development, as over the progression of the game, the choices that you make and the stats that you set, your hero is going to slowly develop into your ideal hero, the one that you'll never truly live up to in your family's eyes. But as you'll see through this list, I love character creation. Why? Well, the easiest answer is low self-esteem. But another thing that you'll notice is almost none of these are multiplayer games because I ride solo. Also because I didn't have any friends. I remember first booting this game up, the air was like static. I could feel a tingling in my body, and every fiber in my being was telling me it wasn't because my finger was in the power socket. I was ready to be a hero, a champion, the person I knew I could always be. And within the first 30 minutes of gameplay, bandits raid your village, and you hide while they kill your family, the villagers, and you're rescued by an actual hero and left to cry yourself to sleep. So, feeling pretty grounded at that point, I quickly got to work training rigorously, taking quests, and kicking the occasional chicken. The game is set in a fantasy land of Albion, teeming with monsters and villains alike, with loads of places to explore, things to do, an iconic soundtrack, built around an intriguing and mysterious lore behind who you really are. This game is one of a kind, and I would easily give it a 9 out of 10 faps. Number 4 is going to be Diablo. I still remember this game like it was yesterday. I was roughly about 10 when I first played it, so definitely not fucking yesterday. It's actually the only game in this list with a multiplayer function, which just helped to make me more self-aware when I would open up my friends list and remembered why I got bullied at school. I'm kidding, I was too stupid to know how to access a friends list, let alone how to invite people. This game was my first introduction to some pretty gruesome settings and the all too familiar, ominous vibes I get when walking down a dark hallway, or hearing my own voice call to me from the other side of a closed door, or letting strange men tickle me in a public restroom. But at this point, it's the only thing that gets me to the weekend. The game is set in a world of sanctuary in the village of Tristram. You play as one of 3 heroes tasked with stopping an ancient force beneath the cathedral that seeks to end all humanity. The main thing I can remember so vividly about this game was opening the door to the very first boss, the Butcher, and walking into this room of gore and mutilated bodies, little sprites dangling lifelessly, naked and void of most of their limbs and internal organs. Although this game might not have the same effect it did almost 20 years ago, it definitely played a major role in my love of thrills, adventure, and a long, thick, veiny piece of lore. Okay, so 3 is going to have to be Silent Hill. 4. The last game made by Team Silent before being disbanded by Konami, and yeah, I have like 7 videos about this shit on my channel, not that anyone cares. So where Diablo introduced me to the overall theme of horror and adventure, Silent Hill really amps up that body horror and the feel of isolation and despair. Silent Hill, and especially 4's monster design, has a level of disturbed, absurd, and grotesque that leaves me waking up from nightmares in a puddle of my own sweat, sticky, with my face down and ass up. Okay, they can't all be winners. This game takes place in South Ashfield Heights, an apartment complex in room 302, with the most calm and rational protagonist in known video game history. Henry Townsend is being introduced to horrors beyond his imagination and with no real trauma or a past worth speaking of. Most of his introduction to cosmic level horrors and constant threats on his life and the lives of people around him, and his usual response is something like, "Oh," or "That's weird." Beyond the giant-limbed baby's twin victim, or the rightfully named Bottom, the only thing more disturbing than some of the monsters themselves is Henry's demeanor throughout the game. Number 2. Okay, so Mass Effect has really made my all-time list of favorite games, as well as games ruined by their sequels, same as pretty much everything else on this list in one way or another. I wish I could recall a memory of this game that drew me in, but everything about this game was something that drew me in. Yes, you can create your own character, command your own starship, and lead a team to help stop a threat to, you guessed it, all of humanity. And some aliens, but who gives a shit about them? I'm kidding, I love you, Garrus. The world surrounding the game was what really drew me in, and apart from a rich lore and fun gameplay, a setting beyond settings is one of the things I will always remember about a game I loved. All of these games have them, but Mass Effect was unique because it was in space. Okay, that doesn't really hit as hard as I thought it would. Yes, the game was still very much in its infancy with some of the concepts and ideas they added to give you more to do, and it becomes so fucking tedious that I'd rather let my entire team die in a blaze of glory rather than spend another minute hunting for resources to upgrade a part of my ship that never gets a cosmetic overhaul. But that's not what the game's about, and if you can enjoy a fantastic adventure in space that Disney won't stick their fucking noses in, this is the game to try. Last but not least, it's Fallout New Vegas. Honestly, I was torn because my first experience with the role player was with 3, where I can remember shoving Walmart breadsticks in my mouth that I half bothered to cook properly. Maybe you know the ones. They used to come in the Walmart brand pizzas, you can find them in the deli, and they used to come with a marinara sauce and a ranch dipping sauce. fucking fire. Anyways, 3 got me into my love for the series, but New Vegas was the massive phallus that presented itself through an unexpected hole in the wall. This shit had everything, but most importantly, it had a combination of my favorite things I could only dream about coming together. I've always had a love and a fascination for the early to mid 1900s. Something about that aesthetic felt like home to me. It was a picture-perfect black and white setting. A lack of color, if you catch my drift. Okay, I'm kidding, but seriously, the music, the outfits, the diners, and drive-in movie theaters, something about it stands out in my mind as an aesthetic that I never want to lose hold of. The sci-fi aspect was another tool that pulled me in because it wasn't over the top and advanced, and in fact, it plays on a lot of the tropes of that time period. It's actually a spot-on representation of what the 1960s would have pictured as the future. And finally, the post-apocalyptic setting. What can I say? I don't want to see the world's destruction, but it certainly would make a hell of a playground. Or at least thematically for someone like me until I stepped out of my house and I was immediately shot in the head. Sounds about right for someone who would let their village burn while they cry themselves to sleep. Anyways, thank you Konosuke7 for having me, and I'm excited to pass it off to JackLanturnDan. I would love to hear what stunted his growth and development as a child. Take it away, Jack.
Alright people, for anybody that doesn't know, my name is JackLanturnDan, and I talk bollocks for a living. First and foremost, I'd just like to say thank you so much to Konosuke7 for allowing me onto his wonderfully produced video here. I'm incredibly excited to be here. Now, I do realise that some people seem to think that the only reason that I'm here is because Konosuke has been ordered to work with the unfortunates of society. I'd like to clear that up. This is not true. In fact, just before I started recording, Konosuke said that I am the most specialist of all of his guests. Thank you very much. So now that you lot know I'm very, very special, let's get on with the show. Right, I'm diving straight in at number 5 with a game that needs absolutely no introduction. But I will introduce it because otherwise you won't know what it is. It's Street Fighter 2. Now, the introduction of this game into the arcading zeitgeist was nothing short of seminal. Before Street Fighter 2, you have relationships. After Street Fighter 2, you have annoying connections to people that didn't play Street Fighter 2. Before Street Fighter 2, you had meal times with the family. After Street Fighter 2, you had Hot Pockets and Tic Tacs because that's how you roll when you play Street Fighter 2. Before Street Fighter 2, you had family members. After Street Fighter 2, you had shadowy figures that you asked to borrow quarters from so that you could play Street Fighter 2. Are you starting to get the picture? After this virus of a game came out in the arcades, it eventually disseminated itself onto all of the home consoles. And at that time, the new shiny was the SNES, or Super Nintendo for anybody that likes lots of words. Now, I have a rather fun story that happened to me around about this time when, I was playing Street Fighter 2. Of course I was playing Street Fighter 2. I didn't play anything else. Did you not get the monologue from the beginning, right? So, I suppose you could go as far as to say that this story could teach us all that you should never judge a book by its cover, and if you're going to, make sure that it's a porno mag. Otherwise, keep your mouth shut. So, me and my friends from school, we used to ditch school all the time. Don't do that, kids. It's why I currently live in a dustbin with a homeless man called Nigel. So unless you want to join me and Nigel, don't do it. So anyway, we would hang around the electronic stores, and around about that time, they had just introduced this promotion where you could try before you buy. They would have these units set up where you could literally play all day long if you wanted to. And guess what? We wanted to. So on this particular day, they had Street Fighter 2 set up on the Super Nintendo. It was an absolutely excellent port. So me and a bunch of my brain-dead mates, we play all day long on this one machine. Or until the security guards would kick us out. On this particular day, we decided to ramp up the difficulty to the very, very top. I mean, we were getting nowhere. The good thing was, you got lots of turns in, because none of us lasted more than about 10 seconds. Usually we were dispatched by a pissed off Blanca, or like a supercharged Chun-Li, and this went on for about an hour. Now, we weren't bad players, but the game difficulty was just so crazy that you just didn't stand a chance. So all of a sudden, this little Chinese guy came up to us. He stood watching and waited for his turn, and it just so happens that it was me that was just before him. So I passed him the controller. He looked at it and sort of turned it in his hands and asked me what the controls were. So I looked over at my mate Steve and sort of smirked, thinking this guy isn't going to last 2 seconds. He's going to be out of there quicker than shit rolls downhill, and then we can get on with being great at Street Fighter 2. So anyway, the game starts up, and I shit you not, he perfected the first fight. By this time, all of my mates had got this weird expression on their faces, as if you'd asked them to do some kind of calculation on the quantum weight of custard. Now, this guy went on to almost perfect the entire game. He never lost a single fight. He would have perfected the entire game if it wasn't for the last round of the last fight, and he got tagged once. That was it. To this date, it's been the best gaming performance I've ever seen. It's funny, he just turned and smiled, gave me back the controller and said thank you. And it wasn't until like years later that I figured out when he'd asked me what the controls were, he was actually talking about the control setup, because you could back then swap the kick and the punch buttons around. So yeah, that's a fun little story that I've told many times over the years, and it was something that I'll never ever forget. So this takes me straight on to numero 4, Ridge Racer. Ridge Racer was a phenomenal arcade machine. Everyone loved it in the arcades. I remember travelling 15 miles to the nearest arcade, a route that went through 2 neighbourhoods that it was 50-50 whether or not you'd come out the other side alive. But you chanced it because you got to play Ridge Racer. And even though the arcade game was absolutely mind-blowing, this is not the version that I'm talking about today. I'm talking about the version bundled with the new machine sent from Jesus himself, the PlayStation 1. We'd heard rumblings and whispers from all over the British Isles about this revolutionary machine. We knew that Ridge Racer was going to be bundled with it, but up until that point, arcade ports had been fairly terrible. Now, I'd never seen it. I'd never seen it advertised. I'd never even seen what the machine looks like until that one fateful day. The old British video game show, and it was called Bad Influence, and it demoed the new PlayStation hardware running Ridge Racer. Oh my God. It was as if Bill Gates had slapped your granny in the face, and with the billions that you'd sued him for, you'd invented the uninventable, a tiny box that played Ridge Racer. I'm going to put my teeth back in now and try again. A tiny box that played Ridge Racer as smooth and fast as the arcade itself. I nearly exploded. And after saving all my pocket money, I'm finally going to go and buy one tomorrow. No, I'm just kidding. I did what all kids did back then. Badgered my dad to the point where he'd been placed on several watch lists because of the threats that he'd made to my life. Luckily, he chose to give in and buy me a PlayStation instead of going to jail. All's well that ends well. Seriously though, I don't think I stopped playing that game for a full year. Every single night. Mainly because that's the only game that I had for it. But man, Ridge Racer on PS1 never let me down. And it's why it will always be on any all-time greatest list that I make. Shooting quickly on to number 3. Now we're getting serious, baby. Number 3 is Command and Conquer. Oh yes, the one and only. Now, full disclosure, I still can't tell you if this is my 3rd favourite game because of how good it is, or the fact that the day I bought it and played it for the first time, I was so off my face on narcotics that I thought Jesus was my co-pilot. Let me explain. So, when this game came out, I was living in a hostel with my girlfriend, and in that place there was a communal kitchen, one that normal and sensible people kept clear of. I was neither normal or sensible at the time. I would prepare and poison both myself and my girlfriend on several occasions because of the filthy conditions people left that kitchen in. Now, my girlfriend had already been poisoned 3 times up until that point, and on this day it was my turn. I had that morning purchased a fresh mint copy of Command & Conquer, but couldn't use it until after 9 o'clock because of some weird electrical consumption thing that was going on in the hostel. So, by 6 o'clock that night, I was well on my way to my first bout of food poisoning. Sweats, farting, feeling very sick, the works. By 8 o'clock, I was shitting out of my eyeballs. My girlfriend phoned the doctor, and I was diagnosed with food poisoning. Along with the diagnosis came the cure. 3 little magic tablets that sent me so far into the stratosphere, I thought I'd turned into a constellation. The constellation of moron. That's what it would have been called, because I spent the rest of the night telling my girlfriend how much I loved her and waving my hands around in front of my face like a tit. Until, of course, I remembered Command & Conquer. I managed to install it, as most of my faculties had returned at that point, and all that remained was a feeling of absolute calming bliss, like sitting on a cloud of cotton wool, while you watch Jeff Bezos pay all your bills and your money worries just went all out the window. Now, Command & Conquer was basically the game that started the RTS genre. There were others that used this interface, but no other game brought the revolutionary concepts to the RTS genre that Command & Conquer did. And on that score, I don't think you'll find many people disagreeing. For me, I feel it spoke to my inner fascist, who had wanted to control an army and jackboot their way through Europe, killing tiny little men with other slightly different coloured tiny little men. I could live out all my male-driven fantasies, and that sounds wrong when I say it out loud. I mean, shooting things and killing things, and then shooting things that are already killed. See? All normal male pursuits. This game gave me endless nights of amazing tactical and arcade style fun. It deserves to be on everyone's top gaming lists. And with that, we shoot through to number 2. Okay, I'm going to throw everybody a curveball here because this isn't exactly from my childhood, but I could not make a list without this being on it. It's The Last of Us. See, I'm sure people are going to complain that it's not from my childhood, but it's one of the most phenomenal games known to man. I had to include it on my list. This game is so good. If it was a religion, I'd get Jesus down off of his cross, I'd tell him to pack his bags and get out of here, because we found a new deity to worship. And yeah, Joel might not have sandals, but he's got a guitar. So off you trot, Jesus. Sorry, man, I went somewhere there. I'll get back to the game. So The Last of Us came out on the PS4. Everything from the gameplay, combat, the storyline, the relationships, everything in this game is perfect. The way that you can see beat for beat how Joel goes from a stone cold killer with a heart of granite because of the loss of his daughter, to first tolerating, then warming up to, and finally not being able to live without Ellie. And if that isn't enough for you, man, it's got fucking zombies in it. Mic drop, job done. Jesus has left the building. Seriously though, even though the story is perfect, I still have my ups and downs with Joel and Ellie, because when you're a psychopathic games fanatic, that rhymed, like I am, you get into games a little bit too much. I mean, when I was playing, it wasn't me controlling Joel and Ellie. It was them. They were little characters with little personalities and little squidgy noses. If they messed up and got themselves eaten by zombies, I was like, oh, Joel, you silly Billy. Why did you do that? Let's do it again. Now, that's all well and good, but eventually, after you're stuck on an area for 40 minutes, and Joel's managed to fuck it up non-stop, even though you're trying your best to fight against his incompetency, then it quickly goes from Joel the silly Billy to Joel, if you don't do it this time, I'm going to boil your head and suck out your fucking eyeballs. So as you can see, this is a roller coaster of emotions, ups and downs, rewards and disappointments. But it takes a very, very special game to make you want to murder the main protagonist with your bare hands at times, but other times makes you want to be their best friend and live a life amongst them. This is the magic that is The Last of Us. Which brings me nicely on to my final pick, the granddaddy of them all, and definitely the oldest game on this list. So old, a lot of you won't even have heard of it. But even if you haven't heard of it, I can guarantee you that you've seen its influence in thousands of games. This game being Dungeon Master on the Atari ST. I first played Dungeon Master when I was 9 years old. Now, at 9 years old, you're basically still mentally challenged. You don't know too much about the world. You know even less about how computers work. And at that time, I remember most of my brain power was reserved for another conundrum that I was trying to work out, but with no progress. This specific conundrum was, why were girls that I found abhorrent to be around the year before starting to become more and more less annoying? And I'm pleased to say, 35 years later, I finally worked it out. No spoilers. So I'm 9 years old, stupid as a box of frogs, but I'm in love with computers. I'm in love with the worlds that they build, the characters that you become, and the music that thump through your veins while you're playing them. My stepdad introduced me to this game, and I can't overstate this enough. It broke my little brain. Again, when you're 9, you have no concept of limitations. You certainly don't know how much a floppy disk can hold, or how that relates to characters on the screen. Dungeon Master is basically the granddaddy of dungeon crawlers. The interface and gaming concepts used in Dungeon Master would go on to dictate an entire genre of games, spanning decades. Even up till today, there are still games being produced that use the original concepts from Dungeon Master. You were tasked, firstly, to create a party of 4 heroes, and then taking these heroes on a quest through 8 dungeon levels. Every level was different and packed full of dangers and monsters of all shapes and sizes. Now, this sounds incredibly naff on the scale of something today, but to a 9-year-old back then, it was the world. I mean, in my little brain, I could have found anything in those dungeon depths. Like I said, I didn't know what the limitations put on computer space and processing power were such that you are only ever going to find a few types of monsters down there, or that all of the walls are literally the same graphics just repainted over and over. To me, I could find anything down there, from Gandalf spit roasting Frodo to my own grandmother passing out Werther's originals to walking mushroom folk. I mean, that's never happened. I'd be worried if it did. But what I'm trying to get at is, even with those limitations, this game made you feel like dungeons went on for thousands of miles, and every monster you met was unique. It did this by implementing such things as skill levels. These skill levels increased the more you used the skill itself, throwing a knife constantly, and you gain levels in throwing up to being a ninja. Every character had a graphical representation of their body, and as such, you could hang clothes on them. All revolutionary stuff. It made the universe feel real. It also gave me a firm grounding in the career that I was going on to chase for the next 20 odd years. That's right, I'm a garbage man. I was never smart enough to make games, and I wasted 20 odd years of my life, kids. Don't let anyone tell you that you can chase your dreams, because it's bullshit. Sorry. Anyway, that's my top 5 video game selection. Thanks for listening, guys. I want to thank both my YouTube betters on this project, The90sRouter, and obviously Konosuke7 for allowing me to sound incompetent next to their brilliance. Thank you, guys. Dan out.